This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. This is Python's Paradise, your film and music show. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena. And folks, class of 1984 celebrates 35 years. I would have been 10 when that was released in 1982. And, well, as of today, I'm celebrating my 45th birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yes, and I have a lovely guest on the phone with me because I remember 2 years ago I had somebody else from the film sing me happy birthday. And today we have the lovely, the beautiful, the talented Erin Noble, who of course was Erin Flannery in the film, here with us today. And of course she played Deneen. How are you doing, Erin?
I'm very well, thank you. And you're going to squeeze a happy birthday out of me?
I am.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, I am not a singer. That's my caveat. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Greg. The Python Hyena. Happy birthday to you. And many more.
Yes, absolutely. And you don't have your clarinet with you?
I don't have my clarinet with me. I don't have my clarinet with me. If you notice in the scenes, you can't even see my fingers. I lean into the music stand so that you can't see my fingers because I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
Well, like I said, I remember when I first caught a glimpse of the film. It was actually at my uncle's place, and he was watching it. I don't think I was supposed to be catching glimpses of it, but of course it was at that scene where Mr. Norris, played by Perry King, was being harassed by Stegman and his gang, and it was that whole I am the future's mine, and that before
Right.
the big climax. And I remember at the time it scared the bejeebies out of me, much like most films of that nature at that time. And it's strange now. It's like I'd say my favorite Canadian film.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah, that's lovely. It's interesting that it has. I was just online last night reading about, because I knew I was going to be doing this interview this morning. I just was looking up the information about the film, the background, and its reception, and all that. And it was saying that for years it wasn't allowed it was banned in certain countries, and only in the UK in 2005 was the entire film, or the film in its entirety, allowed to be shown. And I just had never thought of it as being that daring, and certainly, yes, there is a lot of violence in it, but boy, certainly I didn't think any more than any other film of its day, but perhaps I'm wrong. Maybe it was because it was violence perpetrated against children. I don't know, but it was banned for a number of years in a number of countries, or parts of the film were banned.
It's weird because the year I was born in 1972, so of course the year before I was born, you had 3 films that were heavily banned. One was Clockwork Orange. Another was Straw Dogs. I understand Dirty Harry that was banned in some places as well. And I'm sitting here looking at these films and thinking, 30 years later, Freddy Got Fingered got released with an R rating. Why did that not get an NC-17? Especially since it was mindless and stupid.
Yeah.
I don't get the ordeal today,
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, at least, the violence in films like that in Class of 1984, at least the violence is representing something, whereas something like, I don't know, Transformers is just violence for the sake of violence.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think there's also an issue with violence. I think if it's mixed with sexual violence. So if it's sexual violence, then, like, for example, in Clockwork Orange, there was that very brutal rape, and then also in Class of '84, there was that rape as well. I don't know when rape isn't brutal, but yes, there was. It's just I think maybe that may have been part of it, and I think also maybe it was the fact that it was an adult. Essentially hunting down and getting revenge against kids. That's my guess as to why 1984 was banned. I'm not sure. And it's funny because when you're doing it, and also when I viewed it, to me it was so kind of campy. It was kind of over the top when we knew it was over the top when we were doing it. So I it was all very tongue in cheek. So I'm surprised that people think of it as prescient and that it foresaw all of this violence. And I thought I'm not sure that that's what the writer was going for. I don't know. It seemed to me that it just felt so over the top as we were doing it. And yet so many of those things have come to pass. I think metal detectors in schools and that kind of stuff, so many things have come to pass, unfortunately, at least in the States.
Yeah. It's funny because a few years ago, actually it might have been it would have been a few years ago, I had somebody say to me that every copy of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo should be burned. And I really enjoyed the 2011 version of that film with Rooney Mara. And he said because of the violent rape scene in it. And I personally thought The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was fantastic, but at least I felt something during those scenes, But I caught that same person coming out of a movie theater. He had just watched The Amazing Spider-Man. And when he came over to me, I kind of pointed towards the theater and I said, "So you're okay with the violence in that?" And here's the thing. He was stopped short right there because he didn't have to think about the violence in The Amazing Spider-Man. And I found that kind of violence more offensive than Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which makes you think about it.
I think that's a really good point. I had never thought of it that way. I think you make a very good point.
Yep.
That when it's I guess things like the Batman movie, where you expect the violence, where it's good against evil, and you expect some sort of showdown and some brutality. I guess you forgive it more.
Well, let's face it. People go to these superhero movies to see violence.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, they do.
Yeah.
You take the violence out of those Marvel movies and those DC movies, you think people are going to show up? You think they're going to show up to watch Spider-Man talk it out with the... Yeah. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
So these people, they get caught in their tracks when they're dealing with me, and they do not like it, but hey, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So you, of course, played Deneen,
Yes.
the girl who played the flute. Oh, so very well. At least, the clarinet.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you say you weren't skilled at playing the clarinet. Did you just have a standard edition whenever you did that movie?
You mean for the clarinet?
No, for playing Deneen. Like, did you just go in and audition for the part?
Oh, yes. Sorry, I thought you said standard edition. I thought standard edition clarinet.
Mm-hmm.
A standard audition. Yeah, it was
Audition.
just. I don't even think there was a screen test for that. I think I just went in, and then I got a call back, and then I think another call back. I think it was a pretty easy process, pretty short. I know that certainly in the States they tend to read you and read you and read you and read you. But here, at least at that time, it was pretty easy. I think just one or two callbacks and that was it. And no screen test that I remember.
Now, I don't know. Are you American or a Canadian?
I'm dual.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was born in the States, but I was raised in Canada. My dad's Canadian, my mom's American.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the class of 1984 cast are Canadian.
Yes.
With a few exceptions, excuse me. But you was telling me an interesting story before we started recording here, how you come to realize the status, current status of class of 1984. I wanted to know if you would share that with us.
Sure, and it was not just sort of the breadth of its reach, but also I just thought when we were doing it that it was going to be a campy little film, and it was certainly a lot of fun. But I was at a party in Los Angeles, I guess about 10 years ago, and a young gal in her 20s came up to me and she said, "Are you an actor?" And I said yes, and I thought everybody at the party was an actor, so I didn't think that was particularly remarkable. And she said, "Did you do a film called Class 1984?" And I said, "Yes." And as soon as I said that, behind her there was a group of young people who went, "Yeah, I knew it." And they had kind of pushed her forward to ask her, or to sort of make her ask me. And I looked at them and I said, "I can't believe that you know that film." And one of the guys said, "Oh my gosh, yes, I have that picture over the poster over my bed." And he asked me to sort of sign something, and I just felt like my autograph. And I thought, what in the world? You guys are in your 20s. Why? How do you even know about this film? And they said I guess, I don't know, it was a cult classic for them, and they just really enjoyed it. And that was a shock to me, because I thought it was something that came out and probably fizzled away, and I didn't know that it was sort of having a slow burn among people, or a generation, or the next generation, or whatever. I just had no idea that it had that kind of staying power, and it was a sort of a wonderful kind of surprise. It was very surprising, pleasantly surprising, but very surprising.
Yeah. And of course, the first time we see you, of course, there's chaos going on in the classroom, and of course, you're close knit with somebody that's got a really, really bad haircut. Who I don't know what he's done since. He's kind of fallen off the map.
Poor thing.
Yeah.
He was so talented. What happened to him?
What happened to him?
He could have gone so far.
He could have gone so far. He could have went back to the future for all we know. He didn't know the difference between a tuba and a.
And by the way, he hated that haircut.
I don't blame him.
He hated that haircut. He said that he thought he looked like Pumpkinhead. Which I thought was true. And that old, remember Pumpkinhead from the Tiger, is it called Tiger cartoons? It was a cartoon strip. And I guess it was Canadian. I don't think it's an American strip. And there's a character with this really bad, sort of almost alfalfa from Our Gang haircut.
Yeah.
And that's what, again, he's called Pumpkinhead. And that's what Michael kept saying he looked like was Pumpkinhead. It looked like Pumpkinhead.
Michael J. Fox, of course. That was an early film for him, and I'm sad to hear about the Parkinson's disease has gotten worse for him. But I gotta say, congratulations to him on his marriage. He's been with Tracy Pollan for many years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a good guy. He's a really good guy, and I'm just astonished and so happy that he has had sort of the career trajectory that he's had, because he certainly deserves it.
Yeah, but he kind of owes that gang a little bit of a tribute. I mean, if it wasn't for Stegman and his gang, do you think he'd be able to defeat that hoverboard gang in Back to the Future 2?
I don't know. I'm not sure that he even remembers 1984.
I never ever hear him talk about it, I
Nor do I. Isn't that interesting? Nor do I. So it might just be something that he's, I don't know, he's covering up. I don't know why. It was a lot of fun. And he certainly seemed to be fully present and having a good time while he was making it. We had a good time. So just an exceptional man in terms of his character. At least he was. He was just such a nice guy.
Yeah. No, I liked him in the film, and he was probably the one I most related to because I was a bully victim in high school and actually school in general. I hated school. And I
Oh,
think I related to his character Arthur more than anyone from that movie because, except, fortunately for me, I was not stabbed in a cafeteria, but
thank God.
yeah,
But he did survive.
he did.
He went on. Yeah.
He didn't get to be at that fantastic cantata though.
That finale, no, he missed that.
he missed out on all that, but
Yes. Yes, he did.
no, he like I think he did Family Ties the same year. Did he do that? Start that before or after the movie?
I think he went immediately from '84 to Family Ties. I think it was within a year. I
Oh
think.
wow.
Yeah. So he went there and just exploded.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exploded, went back to the future, and became a teen wolf.
Yep. Yeah.
But no, and of course, I don't know. I hear mixed things about Class of 1984. I love the movie personally, but I understand there's a lot of people that involved with the movie that weren't happy with their experiences. I heard the extras were not treated the best.
I don't know about that. I don't know how well the extras were treated. I don't have a memory of that, unfortunately. I know that I didn't have the best experience in terms sort of creatively and such. I certainly, there were people that I got along with on the set, people I didn't get along with on the set. But in terms, I think it went smoothly enough. But there was some clashes of personalities and things like that.
You don't have to mention names, but give example.
Well, I can only speak for myself. I was not aware of anybody else clashing with anybody else.
Okay.
I didn't see, as far as I could see, the gang, Stegman's gang, all got along beautifully with each other. Just for as tough as they seemed, they were just a bunch of silly guys and girls who just played and seemed to have fun. So they seemed, and Michael got along with absolutely everyone. So from my perspective, that's all that I saw. But from my point of view, I had a hard time with the director.
I've heard stories about that, Mark Lester. In fact, one of the people I previously interviewed had mentioned to me, I said, he was saying to me, going, they should have a 35th anniversary reunion at the Grand Central Tex. And I said, well, that'd be great, but they should have a 35th anniversary reunion here on Python's Paradise. Who's promoted the film more than me? And of course, I come to find out that there was some problematic. Like, I don't know Mark Lester. I've tried to get him on here twice, and I haven't heard back. I know there was some positive things said by people that weren't involved with the film, like Nick Mancuso, I guess, liked him and whatnot. But then I listened to the commentary track on Class of 1984, and they're always my favorite extra on a movie. And yet, I think I could have, and no offense to the people involved with the commentary track, but I think I could have done a better job. And I wasn't even there on set. Because, and again, nothing against Mark Lester, but here's the thing. I've heard commentary tracks by directors who remember pretty much everybody except for the very, 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 very minor people. And I would expect for a movie like Class of 1984, like when I watch the commentary on The Exorcist and William Friedkin remembers that the elderly woman in the carriage almost hits Max von Sydow is 108 years old. That's a minor detail,
Yeah.
for somebody that's just passing through. But I would expect Mark Lester to remember everybody right down to Leroy in the washroom,
Right.
and Here's what bothered me in the commentary. And again, not a shot against him, but I get it. He's been in the business a while. But he never once mentioned Lisa Langlois or Neil Clifford by name. Keith Knight was mentioned by name only once because of the whole long hair, short hair thing with the guy that was supposed to play the part previously. I don't think even you were mentioned by name once in the film, and even Marilyn Ross, who I understand I think he was married to at the time.
Or dating or something.
Yeah, he was asked about by the person doing the commentary. He said, "Tell me about this actress," and it was almost it was awkward, at least from my perspective. And I was sitting there thinking, I've interviewed Mary twice, and I'm like, I could definitely go on there and do a commentary track and talk about it. Again, I didn't make the movie, but for a guy that's gone on and done Firestarter, Armed and Dangerous, Commando, I gotta wonder what his take was with Drew Barrymore and Arnold Schwarzenegger and John Candy in the bunch. I know Stefan Arngrim said he had no problem working with them, but I've heard different things from other people.
Well, I think that he gets the job done. He is organized. He is polite. He was all of the things that I think that one would want, I think, in a director.
Mm-hmm.
But my particular issue, I was young, and I just don't think he was particularly kind.
Okay.
And I don't think he was unkind. I just don't think he was particularly kind. And there was a point in the film when, and this is something that you're going to get a lot of stuff that I did not say on the DVD when they were recording for the extras. For that, I simply said, "Wow, I had a great time. Thanks so much," because I thought that's probably what they wanted to hear.
Okay.
But my issue was that the behind-the-scenes drama, I didn't think that he particularly liked me.
Oh.
And he didn't hold back from showing that in certain ways. I thought he was sort of cold to me, and that's okay. That's fine. But then I showed up for work one day, I was supposed to be on the schedule, and then I wasn't. There was a particular scene that they were going to be shooting that I was supposed to be in, and then they said, "Oh, no, we're not shooting that, so you're not in today." And that was fine. And then when I showed up the next day for when I was supposed to be shooting, the makeup gal was just had her knickers in a twist. She was all upset on my behalf. She said, "Well, they filmed that scene that you were supposed to be in yesterday, but they put somebody else. They gave your line to somebody else, to another gal." And I said, "What? They weren't supposed to film that. They just said they weren't going to film it." And she said, "No, they did film it, but they gave somebody else your line." And so I went to Mark. I took him aside and I said, "Listen, I understand that this happened yesterday." And I said, "Listen, if you don't like me, if you don't want me, if you don't think I'm right for this part, recast it. Just recast it." He said, or something. Just, we're not that far in. Just recast it and let me go. But don't slowly humiliate me by taking away my scenes little by little by little.
Yeah.
And he said, no, I think everything's fine. And I said, "No, it's from one professional to another. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. Sometimes you're just not happy. And I won't take it personally. Just let me go if that's what you're feeling. I can take it. But what I really can't take is coming onto set and then having my part given away to various people." There was a gal in the classroom scene that I guess he had his eye on, or somebody had his eye on, and she kept getting more and more of my lines. And as a matter of fact, at the very, very end, when I'm conducting,
Yep.
they sent me for conducting lessons with the Toronto Youth Symphony Orchestra. One night at Central Tech, they said, "Come, we need you to rehearse to do this. They're going to teach you how to do it." And when I arrived, this other actress was there. And I said, "What are you doing here?" She said, "Oh, well, there's a possibility that I'll be doing the conducting at the end of the film." And I just lost my mind. I called my agent, and it was already like 7 o'clock in the evening, 8 o'clock in the evening, and had to call her at home, and I had to use a payphone because that's what all we had back then was a payphone.
Yeah.
And saying, "What? I'm not going to go in and do this. If I mean, this is ridiculous. This can't go on. This is." I had a talk with him, and why is he still doing this? So my agent had to call somebody. I don't know who called whom, but eventually we both went in and did our lessons, and then at the very, very end, it was just me. I don't know if that was Mark's a mind game that he was playing with me. I don't know, or with her. I don't know. I don't know what he was promising her. I have no idea. But it was disconcerting, and it really undermined my confidence. What little confidence I had at the time, such a young little girl. It just made me feel as though he didn't like me, either personally or like the work that I was doing, and yet didn't guide me, didn't say, "Hey, give me this flavor," or a little bit more like that. Just didn't guide me. Just seemed dissatisfied, and that was my experience with Mark Lester. So it wasn't a positive one.
The only other person I remember, and I don't know this girl's name, but I know there was a blonde girl that sat beside you in the...
Yeah.
Yeah. She had a few lines. I don't know who she was. Now, that would be an example of somebody I expect Mark not to remember in a commentary track, you know? But, and
Right.
It's nothing against her.
Yeah.
It's just, it's minor.
Well, she was the one.
Yeah.
She was the one who got my, I think in the cafeteria, I was just watching the film last night to sort of refresh my memory.
Mm-hmm.
And in the cafeteria where, when Arthur is stabbed,
Mm-hmm.
in my memory, there was a little scene between Arthur and me and whoever else was at the table. And there were a couple of lines back and forth. And in my memory, when the film first came out, I thought it was intact. But when I watched it last night, you just see him come to the table and put some food on the table, and there is no line exchange. Although that blonde gal is sitting there, and that was supposed to be me sitting there. But I don't know if they actually cut that line, or if I just saw an abbreviated version on YouTube, which is what I watched last night.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not sure if the line was just edited on YouTube, or if there really was no line in the final production. But when they filmed it anyway, there was a line, and she was the one who got it. Now, let me say something about that gal.
Okay.
She was extremely nice.
Mm-hmm.
I think her name was Darlene,
Okay.
and I'm sorry, they're doing something in the. If you hear some sort of rattling
okay.
in the apartment below me, they're doing some renovations, so
Okay.
bear with me. But she was extremely nice, and we hung out. When she even helped me celebrate my birthday, we went out and celebrated my birthday and had a drink, and she was a very, very, very nice gal. So I don't want to in any way disparage her.
Absolutely.
Because she was an actor just looking for a break like everybody else, but she was also a very nice gal. And again, that's my experience with everybody, all of the actors on the set was just wonderful. I had a great experience with everybody. It was just really, really just Mark was my issue.
You're not the only one to have had a complaint about Mark Lester, and I don't know. Like I said, the commentary track, I was like, I was a little underwhelmed, and I don't know. I almost wish I was sitting there with him doing this, because I think I could have livened that up. Nothing against the other guy, but I think I might have knew more about the film than he did, and he directed the film.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But I'm going to tell you something. I wanted to get you on here last year, and I couldn't. It wasn't till this year I actually found you. I found you under Erin Noble. You were Erin Flannery back then. I
Yes.
finally found you, so I was excited when I finally found you.
Oh, great.
So I definitely like what you did in the film.
I wasn't fishing for a compliment, but thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Now, there was a lot of interesting people in that film, of course, and Perry King, of course, playing Mr. Norris, who walks into this catastrophe after Mr. Goldstein goes for a little tumble down the stairs, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I really enjoyed Perry King's work in this film. What was he like for you to work with?
He was lovely, actually. He was actually really lovely. There was a couple of times that I actually was watching him and trying to, because he'd certainly done a lot more work than I had at that time, and he'd just come off of, I want to say something Cadillac or something, some miniseries. I've forgotten what it was called. He'd just come off of that, and he was really hot, and so I was really just watching him and noticing how he seemed to be really more of a collaborator with the director, which was something I hadn't seen before. I'd seen mostly just the director wants this, you do as instructed or as guided or whatever, and he seemed to be more like, well, what if I do it like this, or what if the camera's over here, and what if that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And I thought that was really interesting. Part of me was thinking, wow, who does he think he is? He's just an actor. But he really knew his craft, and he was making suggestions, and he was very confident in that, and I really I admired that, and he worked very quickly, which I also really admired.
Mm-hmm.
And he just seemed like a real professional. Now, again, with him, he's a big American star. I didn't get to know him. We weren't friends. There wasn't a lot of warmth between us. But whereas, like with Michael, because our characters were friends, we actually got to know each other and hung out. But and I think probably the same is true with Stegman Gang. Those actors, because they're in so many scenes together, I'm sure that they all kind of hung out together and got to know each other. But I didn't get to know Perry that well, except just to watch him and to think what a consummate professional he was, and what a good actor he was.
And of course, Deneen was, of course, the first, outside Mr. Corrigan, the first bright light, because when he walks in that classroom, you can tell he's not impressed. And of course, you're the first one to show some hope,
Yes, that there are some normal kids in that classroom.
Yeah, and of course, who can forget Roddy McDowell? I loved him in Fright Night. I think he was prepared to fight vampires after teaching class with a gun.
Yeah.
I think Roddy McDowell, that scene where he's teaching class with the gun, where he just loses his mind. What a powerful moment! And Roddy was so good in this movie.
Yeah. And again, I'm going to keep saying this over and over again, but such a nice guy. I was, when we were filming the alley scene,
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend in from Winnipeg, which is where I grew up.
Okay.
And we were all, everyone's packed into that alley, all the crew and everybody, and he's sitting in a chair, and she goes over to him because I guess she doesn't know that she's not supposed to. She doesn't know. And she goes over and says hi and introduces herself. And he says hi. And they have this chat. And later I go over to her and I say, I don't even go over to Roddy McDowell and say hi. I mean, I'm in the film and I don't even do that because I'm too intimidated. And she wasn't. She just went over and said hi. And they had this lovely chat, and then she was able to go back to Winnipeg and said, yeah, The conversation was Roddy McDowell, and I just thought that was. I'd never even said two words to him, and she was having this lovely chat with him. And I thought that was very sweet of him, and it gave her a lovely memory.
Oh, that is nice. And of course, you're my fifth person I've had here on the show from that movie. I've had Mary Lynn Ross on here a couple times. I love Mary. I had her on in 2015. I had her on again last year with Belinda Belansky because, of course, when Stegman is at the apartment, he's watching Bobby Joe and the Outlaw, which is another Mark Lester film.
Oh, really?
Yep, that's the film they're watching. I thought it was kind of a little bad knockoff of Bonnie and Clyde, but Mary Lynn Ross is in that film, and
Get out of here.
Yeah, and Belinda Belansky was in that. Belinda, of course, was in The Howling and Piranha and Gremlins, and I've had Belinda on a couple of times as well, but I got them both on together last year, and just hear their friendship, and it was just kind of cool to be part of that. And of course, Mary Lynn Ross has got her own YouTube thing going with I think it's called Beverly Hills Shamas, and I think that's what it's called, and very entertaining. I'm still in touch with her, and I think Mary, again, real trooper, and I understand through the rape scene, I think the guys were more uncomfortable with that scene than she was.
That's often the way, I think. When I heard the same thing happened in The Accused with Jodie Foster during the rape scene, that the actors who are playing the rapists really sort of go out of their way to make sure that the actor, who is the character that's being raped, that the actor playing that character is comfortable. Is okay? Is there something that during those sorts of scenes? I think there has to be a lot of rules about what feels safe and what doesn't feel safe. And I'm sure that for the actors themselves, it's are you okay with this? If I put my hand here, is that okay? Is that okay? Is that okay? Because it's I think it's really uncomfortable, probably very, very uncomfortable for everybody involved. It's not something that you want to film. It's not one that you want to do a lot of takes of.
It's funny you mention that because I'm currently reading Gunnar Hansen's book about the making of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and of course he played Leatherface, and he's recalling an incident where Jim Sato, who played the cook, was supposed to beat Marilyn Burns with a broom. And Jim was always holding back because he didn't want to hurt her, And at the end of every take, he was like, "Are you okay? Did I hurt you? I'm so sorry," But it's interesting, especially when you hear about the villains. But I know you had no scenes with Mary Lynn, but did you ever get to meet her?
Oh, sure. She was on set. I think she was
executive producer.
Executive producer,
yeah.
That's right. So she was. I met her a couple of times because she was on set as executive producer at various times. But I don't know. I don't even know if I have actually. I probably shook her hand, but I'd never had any conversation with her. I think I watched her chat with people. She seemed lovely from what I could gather, but we never actually, chatted face to face that I remember.
Yeah, I like Mary a lot. I've, like I said, I've stayed in touch, and I've had her on here a couple times, and she's an absolute. She's an absolute doll.
Well, I like the fact that she was an executive producer.
Yeah.
I'm sure that she insisted upon that, and I'm glad because this business still is so populated by men and dominated by men. It's nice that back then she was interested in producing.
Yeah. And of course, Stegman's gang. Timothy Van Patten. I mean, I think everybody thought he was going to go on to be the star. Ended up, of course, you hear this about Star Wars. Alec Guinness was the veteran when they went into it. They all thought that it was going to be Mark Hamill be the big breakout star. Ended up being Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were counting on Timothy Van Patten over Michael J. Fox. And I heard originally they wanted to get Vincent Van Patten, which I think might have been interesting considering that Vincent Van Patten had just played the goofy football jock Tom Roberts in Rock and Roll High School. What an interesting transition this would have been for him, you know. But Timothy, like coming into this, number one, what a great piano playing when he comes in there. I heard he actually did that on his own.
Yes. Yeah, he actually played. And I don't know if he chose that piece. I don't know if it was chosen for him. But yeah, he actually played that.
Yeah, I heard that he never wanted to pursue acting. I know he's doing really well with Boardwalk Empire and various projects he's happy directing, but I guess he wasn't happy being on screen, I guess. But he did a great job as Stegman in this film.
He did, and I'm going to sound like a just a broken record here, but he was the sweetest guy on the planet. Just a really nice guy.
Yeah.
Really, really, really nice guy. Yeah. And I think that he had, I don't know, but my impression was that he was having a very good time playing a villain. That it was a lot of fun for him. I think that the Stegman gang, playing a baddie is, I think, a lot of fun. And they got to just be bullies and terrorize, quote unquote, terrorize people, and then they would laugh between takes and go back to being the baddie. And I think they just had a lot of fun. I think a lot more fun than Michael and I had, because they got to be just evil little kids and do terrible things, and we were the sweet, squeaky clean little boring kids. But he just seemed like the nicest guy, and that he was having a very, very, very good time.
Yeah, and of course, I had Lisa Langlois on here a couple of years ago. I'm hoping to get her on again very, very soon.
You said that she's moving back to Toronto.
Oh, yeah. You know, the interesting thing about this movie, I know I heard like people with the director and whatnot. The movie's brought me a lot of joy because I remember my first interview doing this podcast. Like, I've been reviewing movies since 1996, and I started here at CHSR in 2005. So I've just been reviewing movies, and I this podcast situation kind of landed on me in April of 2015. I got an interview with Tommy Wiseau of that movie The Room, and yeah, and after that it was like, who else could I talk to? And I remember one of the first people that I looked for contact information on was Lisa Langlois, because I remember I had such a big crush on Patsy watching that movie growing up. And not only did she come on, you know, but her manager Mike sends his clients my way too. And I was talking to him this week actually, and I've been dealing with him the last 2 years. He's been great with me, and I'm still in touch with Lisa, but I know she's very, very, very busy. But I absolutely loved her in this movie. I loved the pinkish red orange hair.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, she's very innovative, because I know she said that there was absolutely nothing for the gang to do, and she said she would always invent stuff to do, like coming through the metal detector and grabbing the nightstick from the garden,
right,
and doing those gestures with it, or coming into the classroom, grabbing your clarinet and sucking on the end of it,
yep,
you know, or
yep. And I think that was I guess a surprise for me, in that I hadn't done a lot of film, and I had gone to theater school. I'd done plays, and I was waiting for waiting to be directed.
Mm-hmm.
Waiting for, why don't you do this, or how about that, or what are your thoughts on, or that kind of stuff. And it was never forthcoming. And I thought, oh, maybe we're supposed to jump in like Lisa did and just do things and wait for someone to say, no, don't do that. I didn't know how much I was supposed to bring to the table and how much the director was supposed to bring to the table. And certainly, I have learned, certainly for doing television, that, boy, you better bring everything to the table. You better come fully prepared with tons of ideas, because it goes so quickly that you're not going to get a lot of input from the director, particularly if you're not the lead. You're just sort of swimming on your own. And I think that was a good lesson. I think that we moved very quickly in Class of 1984. It was a very quick, as opposed to, say, something like Incubus, which for me was a slower process, and therefore a more creative process, I felt, because I could sort of investigate more. But this was a real, 84 was boom, boom, boom. And so the actors had to come up with, I think you could actually kind of tell that in some of the scenes where the gang is all there, and like in the first classroom scene when Norris says, okay, everybody out. Do you belong here? Okay, everybody out, who doesn't belong here. And they kind of mosey on out, but they're ad-libbing and they're saying all these lines. I mean, that's all them. That's all the actors, who they push, how they push them, all the ad-libbed lines. That's all the actors inventing those things. And I didn't know that that's what I was supposed to do. I thought that a director would say that, hey, do this, hey, do that. So that was a learning experience for me. And I guess Lisa had certainly had more film experience than me at that point, and knew to kind of just go for it.
I heard that Lisa, originally they wanted her to play your role, and she said that she's played the nice girl before. She wanted to play the nasty gang girl, and she came in dressed in costume to prove herself to play Patsy.
Get out of here!
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I thought she looked great. It was a great part. I remember her outfits so vividly.
Yep.
and I think it must have just been a lot of fun for her. Although I hear that she says that she was bullied a lot by the other punks, because she wasn't a real punk.
Yep.
But nevertheless, I think she must have had a wild time. Although I think that I don't know, she may have had a hard time with the other fellas in the gang because she was the only gal. I don't know. And those heels that she had to wear all the time.
She didn't have problems with the other gang members. The situation was when they went to the punk bar where Teenage Head is playing.
Yeah.
I guess some of the punkers that were in the scene and the extras there didn't consider them real punkers, or they considered them fakes. And she related a story where they had said that they were going to get her, and she said during that scene you never really see her because she kind of hid, which, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that's kind of not acceptable.
No. But I'll say one thing. She did say that the whole breakaway bottle that she uses to threaten you with, she has it against your neck, she said that was her idea.
Oh, was it?
Yep.
Oh, it may have been, because I do remember them having problems because they didn't have a breakaway bottle available. And so they had to go and rush and try to find something, a breakaway bottle. I don't remember that was her idea, but I do remember that there was sort of a rush to try to find a breakaway bottle. And they didn't have that many, so she couldn't. I think they had two, so she could only do that take twice, because they didn't have any more for her to break.
I think it was her idea. I don't quote me on it. I haven't listened to the interview for a while, but I know she was innovative. The gestures she'd make like even when the gang is pulled up beside you and Michael J. Fox there, he goes, tried to coach you guys to get in the car, and you see Lisa there doing the little gestures. Like Lisa was very, very conscious that the camera was on her, and that. She had to be active, and to me it added to the character.
Well, I think that what it does is it adds to the texture of the scene. It adds to the depth of the scene. That even though the scene might not be about her, she's certainly fully engaged and involved in the scene, and that so that when you watch it, you might not have your eyes on her, although you as a 10-year-old boy obviously did. But you might not have your eye. The average viewer, might not have their eyes on her because it's full of a whole gang of people. But she certainly contributes to the texture and the layer of that scene.
I'll say it too. Lisa did something for me a couple of years ago I'm going to share with you that I thought was really special, and it told me a lot about her. You remember the Ice Bucket Challenge?
Yes.
Yeah. For that rose all kinds of awareness for ALS. I got somebody close to me that's got ALS right now, which is not fun.
No.
But after that, another challenge rose called the Doubtfire Face Challenge for suicide and depression after Robin Williams had passed away. And of course, I've been hit with not suicide, but depression time and time in my life, you know? Mm-hmm. And this challenge came up where you take a pie in the face and you nominate 3 people. And I thought, I used to love that kind of humor growing up, you know, stuff on Nickelodeon and all that stuff. So I thought, we got to get the industry involved in this one because it's so much more entertaining than ice bucket water, you know. So I did the pie in the face challenge for the Doubtfire Face, and I threw the nominations out to people I interviewed, and one of the people I threw the nomination out to was Lisa Langlois. And she accepted. So and she contacted me, and we had a conversation about it, and she wanted to know what to do and how to go about it. So she did a video where she took actually her son put a pie in her face, and she nominated some Canadian comedians to do the challenge, and.
Oh.
And it was pretty spunky, you know. I always appreciate it, and as a result, I know she had a charity that she was involved in, and as a result, I made a donation to her charity.
Oh, you see?
Yeah.
What goes around comes around.
Yeah, well, you know, I thought, you know, it was my way of showing appreciation, and I thought it was really cool that she did that, and I know Stefan Armgrim is going to do it. In fact, he said he's going to do this with Jenny Wright, who I interviewed from Pink Floyd The Wall. And
wow.
So I'm looking forward to seeing those two do it.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm sure.
But yeah, if you ever go on my YouTube channel, you can check that video out because Lisa was a real trooper, and I don't know, and if you're up for it, take the challenge yourself if you like.
I will go to your YouTube channel and I will look it up.
Absolutely,
look it up.
And speaking of Stefan Armgrim, I've had him on here a couple of times, and I know that little white shirt he had on. I guess the skeleton that is on it. Timothy Van Patten drew that on there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But I found something else about that thing. He suggested that I interview a musician who was in the movie New Year's Evil. I was like, okay, yeah, I know that movie. And he goes, yeah, that was the guy that originally owned that shirt. And so I contacted the guy, and I haven't got the interview set up yet, but he goes, where did that shirt go anyway?
Yeah.
But Stefan, of course, another great guy, still in touch with him. And, of course, in that classroom scene, he's not here.
Yeah.
Tell me about your interactions with him.
He was very, very quiet. He was very, very quiet. I don't know that I even said 2 words to him, to tell you the truth. He was very, very quiet. He seemed like a lovely guy. All I remember, and boy, I hope he doesn't mind if I say this, all I remember is my heart kind of breaking for him during the classroom scene, which went on for every classroom scene. We filmed all, back to back to back. So all the classroom scenes were filmed, the same series of days. So I don't remember what day it was, but we were filming a classroom scene, and And all I remember was that there was this sort of commotion over on that side of the room, and we stopped filming, and he's epileptic, and he was having a seizure, and that's all. And then we all had to sort of clear the classroom, and someone sort of took care of him, and he recovered, and took a while, and got his senses back, and did whatever he needed to do to get himself relaxed and together, and we're in the right mindset, and eventually we got back to filming. And I think what had happened, I know what had happened. When they say, okay, everyone out, everyone out, everyone out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as we're going out, I remember Neil, who played
Fallon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Turned around and said to him, "Come on. Hey, dickhead," or whatever. Come on. And he wasn't responding. And he was still sitting where he was sitting. And that's when he began to have a seizure. And I'm sure that Neil was thinking, "Dude, come on. We're supposed to be leaving the scene. Let's go. Come on." And I think Neil saw it first and said, "Oh, something's wrong. Something's wrong." And that's all I remember of him, because he was just a very I think you can see it by his demeanor on screen that he's a quiet actor.
Yeah.
He's small in his movements, but really very nuanced. And that's how he was off screen as well. He wasn't certainly the loudest or the most boisterous. He seemed to be a very I'm curious when you say that you've interviewed him, because he seemed to be so non-talkative. But I didn't have. I hate to say I didn't have any interaction with him, except that he seemed to be lovely, a nice guy. It's
interesting because Lisa Langlois is my longest interview. I had her on for 2 hours.
Wow.
Yep. She was just shy 2 hours by 5 seconds. Still my longest. Stefan Arngrim I had on twice, and he was on for 118 minutes both times. And he just always had stuff to share, And I never heard this story, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, he...
Maybe you've never heard the story because everybody else is too delicate to say it, and maybe I'm indelicate by saying it. Maybe I shouldn't have.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's not you're mentioning something happened on set.
Yeah.
But I never felt that he was holding back on anything. I actually joked a lot with him. I said to him, Stefan, why were you the wimp of the group? I said, during the gang fight, you're getting your butt kicked. And I said, when you go into the alley scene, of course, he grabs you. Of course, then again, you're ruggeder looking than Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
Michael J. Fox looks like a fawn being mauled by a bear when Keith Knight gets hold of him.
I know.
And Keith Knight, unfortunately, no longer with us. What an interesting transaction. He goes from Meatballs, where he's just this darling guy, sharing the munchies with Spaz. I always said Spaz grew up to be drugstore. But and of course he plays Barnyard.
Yeah.
And what were your memories of Keith?
Oh, I'm going to sound like a broken record. Just the nicest guy on the planet. Soft, gooey, funny. I remember, I guess we were filming at Central Tech, maybe we were filming on Yonge Street, the alley scene somewhere. And I live right downtown, and I lived right downtown at the time, and I guess he did too. And he'd walk me home, and we would just chat. And he was just a sweet, funny, nice, big guy. And I was just devastated when I learned that he had died.
Yeah.
Because he was just the nicest guy. Just and funny.
And of course, Neil Clifford playing Fallon. I heard he was a dancer. He's now a sculpture guy. Yeah, he does sculptures now.
He was a dancer, yes, and his wife was a dancer. His wife at the time, I don't know if he's still married, but I remember that his wife was having their first child.
Yeah, I heard a story about that. I didn't hear it from him, but I heard that when she was having her baby, he wasn't allowed to leave set. So I can kind of understand why he's a little distant from the film.
Yeah, it was. She was having a baby, and I remember he was talking to Perry King about it, because I think Perry was a father, and certainly none of us were parents yet, and he was just, his head was in the clouds. His head was absolutely in the clouds over this baby, over his wife having their first child. He was just beside himself, and I remember when he showed up the next day after his child was born. I think it was a little boy, because I remember seeing him on the street a couple of years later with his boy, and he there were fumes of happiness coming off of him. He was just so besotted with the whole experience, and we were all very happy for him, because we knew that it was that the birth was imminent, and when it finally happened, he was just over the moon. Completely over the moon, and it just so juxtaposed with the character that he played. This, and you can see by his physique that he was a dancer. He was something, because he was just in the most extraordinary shape. And I was watching it last night when he was doing when he was chasing Leroy, and he's doing this stunt, jumping around on the stairs.
Yep.
Oh, you show off. You show off, because he's just in such extraordinary shape that he's able to do anything. I mean, the way that he looked in those leather pants, I mean, he was just in extraordinary shape.
I was going to say, Conan the Barbarian came out the same year as Class of 1984, and of course Sendel Bergman, who played Valeria in the film, was a dancer, and you can tell by her movements during her fight scenes, it added to her scenes.
Yes.
Well, when you see him, see Neil Clifford and Perry King going at it just before the table saw scene, and he's got that chain. His movements, like, very, very well choreographed without it looking corny.
What's funny, you should say that, because I was thinking the same thing about the same scene, but when he actually is thrown backwards onto the saw, and for the final kill, I thought, oh, I wonder if that's a stuntman. So I kept replaying it. I said, no, that's Neil. That's Neil. So he jumps up and jumps back and arches back. And, oh, he's doing that? That's his dancer there. Because he has or at least had the physical ability. He could leap backwards onto that saw without killing himself. And I thought that was, it must have been fun as well.
Yeah, I understand that scene almost landed the film an X rating, too.
Really?
Yeah.
For violence?
I'm guessing, yeah.
Well, you saw his arm off. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's...
It's funny, because I was talking to Lisa about this, and she was saying she doesn't think Patsy died in the film. And I'd say out of everybody in that film, you could say that Patsy survived. You could say that.
Sure.
And I was thinking, and I said this to Stefan Armgrim, I said that had I wrote the screenplay, I would have added maybe an extra subplot in there. Maybe, push the film to maybe a 2-hour limit, which, would be fine. And I might have had... maybe Michael J. Fox because he had Joe Kell, and maybe have somebody else who might have been interested in Patsy. Because I think, number one, it would have added to her, and of course, her character was so devious. Think of the ways they could have used this guy, and ways they could have hurt him. And maybe a situation where he does get hurt, this guy. And I was thinking to myself, I probably would have tagged something on to the end of it, and you'll probably like this. Because I think after that final shot, I would have had the camera pan up, go to black, and of course you cut. and then have maybe, a sequence where Patsy makes her exit before anybody gets there. And maybe she's kind of like stumbling along, but she gets out of the school, maybe goes to some, I don't know, all-night cafe or something, cleans herself up, and then have a scene where she goes out the back into an alley, and she thinks she hears something. And what I would do is I would have had her hear the sound of a broken glass, and I would have had Deneen stick the bottle to her neck. and Deneen would not kill her. After all, nobody would know that Patsy was alive or whatever,
Right.
And what I would have done is I would have had, she say, I would have the next day the guy that was interested in Patsy would show up at your place, and you open the door and you're all sunny and whatnot, and you tell the guy to come inside and ask him how he's doing, because obviously he got roughed up or whatever by the gang over Patsy or whatever. And you would have showed your nasty side, because you would have had Patsy as kind of your prisoner in the basement or something like that. And I would have had that last shot focus in on Patsy's eyes, as if to say, you might have me, but I really have you, meaning she could use this guy to get out. And that's how I probably would have ended the movie.
Huh.
What do you think about that?
I think it's interesting. I never saw Patsy as a what? I was saying as a player. That's what I was going to say. But I never saw her as a leading character. She was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But she was always, to me, a follower.
Oh, yeah.
She was always someone who, what are we doing now? What are we doing now? She was never a leader in that sense. And I don't know that without a gang she would survive. My feeling is that she needs to attach herself to something. And
that's a good point.
That's my thought about it.
I've come up with interesting things about, like I've saying to Stefan, I think the most psychotic one in the gang, the one I would be most afraid of, would be Fallon. I think Fallon was the scariest one in the gang. He's the one that had it not been him being called off, he was going to nail Mrs. Norris with a chain, I mean,
yeah,
he had no
true.
conscience.
That's true.
Yeah, he, to me, would have been the one I would have been the most afraid of had that gang been real.
And yet, Stegman was able to control him.
Yep, Stegman was able to control him.
Yep.
Now, I haven't mentioned Joe Kell. Do you have any? It's funny. Lisa told me to reach out to Joe Kell, and I've reached out twice. I haven't heard back.
I don't know who that is.
He was the guy that fell from the flagpole.
Oh, okay. Yes, I remember.
Okay.
I don't know if he was an actor or a stuntman. Was he an actor?
He's an actor. Actually, it's interesting because he was in a movie with Lisa the same year as Class of 1984. They both did a movie called Deadly Eyes together.
Oh.
Yeah, which was also shot, I believe, in Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
And he also went on to direct a movie called Summer 11, where he had Lisa in it.
Oh.
Which was a little family film.
Oh, how lovely is that?
Yeah.
And nice. So they've worked 3 times together.
Yeah, well, Leslie Donaldson, who Lisa worked with in Deadly Eyes, Joe Kell worked with her again, too, in a movie called Special People. So there's a nice little connection there. I've never made contact with Joe Kell yet, but I know when I interviewed Lisa, she said he'd be open to talk. She said certain people wouldn't and certain people would. You know?
Do tell. Who would and who wouldn't?
Well, I was told that Timothy Van Patten would be a hard one when it comes to this movie. But I can't even find contact information on him. So I was also told that Neil Clifford kind of closed himself off. Now, when I was talking to Stefan, he told me to at least reach out to Neil. He said, I'm probably going to get declined But he said at least reach out to him anyway. And I did hear back from Neil, and he was polite. He said he respectfully declines, but thanks for reaching out. I don't know. I might give him another shot this year, for the 35th anniversary, but I don't know. I'll tell him, if he doesn't want to do it, just don't respond, because I don't want to hassle somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I certainly liked what he brought to the film, and just like with Lisa, when the camera is not focused on him, he's doing something,
Yeah, and he lived right around the corner from me, and I remember that he had a party at his house, I guess maybe a year later after, I think maybe about a year later, once it had come out. But somehow, I guess Family Ties had already come out as well, because it had just hit. And I remember being at this party, and Neil came over to me and he said, "Can you believe it? Can you believe what's happening with Michael?" And I said, "I know, isn't it amazing?" Well, and we both said, "Geez, we never would have thought." Never, not that he doesn't deserve it. He's an extraordinary man and talented and a lovely guy. But we just thought never would have saw that coming. Never would have seen it coming. So we were both sort of talking about the ebbs and flows and vicissitudes of fate, how things turn out, and.
I'd love to get him on here, but again, I don't know. I know I reached out to a lot of people. I haven't heard back from Perry King either, and I haven't heard back from Mark Lester. But, like I said, you're my fifth. And, of course, you did get to work with Al Waxman briefly in that film as well.
Oh, yeah.
Now, there's a veteran.
Yes, absolutely, yes. And another nice guy. Seemed to be a very nice. We had a very brief scene, but a nice guy, real professional. Just really sort of did his work, and again seemed to be, like Perry King, a real collaborator with the director in terms of where he was going, what he was doing, that sort of thing. Very, very brief scene that he and I were in together, but
I was gonna say, did you get to meet Teenage Head? I know you weren't in the punk scene, but
no.
Yeah, I had Gord Lewis from the band on here. He was the one I was suggested to interview because the lead singer, of course, has passed away. But I love that song "Little Boxes," and it's a song I can hear while the girl's getting naked in the back room. And I as I joked with you last night when I was talking to you, I was like, it's the first time you got a nude woman on the screen. I'm concerned with the background music. I played Little Boxes on here a lot.
Well, you saw that when you were 10?
No, it was released when I was 10. I would have been 10 in 1982. I would have saw that probably not too long after, maybe 84, 85, I would not have been 18, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, how did you see that film when you were so young?
Yeah, it scared me then. Now I'm like, gee, it's a major film with me. I've gotten, so far as of you, more interviews from that film than any other film right now.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder why that is.
I don't know. I like the film. And I'm going to tell you, when the National Canadian Film Day came up earlier this year, I was a little put off by the fact they were playing clips from pretty much every film but class of 1984, as if they were ashamed of it.
I've never thought of it as a Canadian film. I've always thought of it as an American film.
To me, it's Canadian. Yep.
Because it's Canadian producers, American producers, American money, and it is, I think, supposed to be a comment on, the American school system, and it certainly seems a lot more plausible to be happening in the States than it is here. So although it was made here and it certainly is rife with Canadian actors, it's never to me a Canadian film the way say a Cronenberg film is a Canadian film.
Oh yeah.
So it's always been an American film in my mind that Canadians got to participate in.
Well, I understand too that scene there in the back room where the woman's getting nude. That was I heard was another problematic shot in the movie.
Well, there's really no point to it except to get somebody naked in a film. I mean, there really wasn't. The film, it's interesting because in the script, the scene in the alley scene, Deneen, the way it was written, they were going to, I don't think that Lisa came up with that bottle thing because...
Oh, maybe not.
Yeah, as I remember, the way that the scene was written in the script, they break a bottle and then they rip open Deneen's shirt so that her breasts are exposed, and then they like put the jagged bottle up against her chest to threaten her. And I remember saying, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing that. Why? Just so we can have some tits in a film. And so we didn't do it, but I guess they had to get it somewhere. And that scene, I was watching it last night, it goes on forever. It takes her forever to get naked. And I thought, really, people, let's get on with it. So
you weren't listening to that cool song in the background, Little Boxes? That, to me, makes the scene for me.
Oh.
I would have shot the scene differently. I would have, and I told Lisa this, I would have had, a close-up shot of her pulling stuff off, stuff dropping at her feet and whatnot. You can do, like, it's just like with Hitchcock and Psycho. You don't have to see it to think you're seeing it.
Right. Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I agree. I probably would not have had the woman get naked, but I heard that, again, that was another scene where the actors were very uncomfortable.
Well, wouldn't you be? Absolutely. Of course.
Yep.
Oh, yes. And everyone feels for this gal who's
Yep.
going to be getting naked, and how can I make this comfortable for you? And then you have to kind of like touch her and roughhouse her. At least Neil has to. But do you mind if I touch you here? Can I touch you? It's extremely uncomfortable. No one likes it. It's not fun for anybody. Maybe it's fun for the crew. But it certainly is not fun for the actors.
I have an interesting tidbit for you, though.
Mm.
I couldn't believe this, but boy, did it make sense. Stefan Erngren was telling me that they played the gang like Looney Tune cartoons. And I said, what do you mean? He said, drugstore is really Daffy Duck. And I said, really? And he said that Barnyard is Elmer Fudd.
Oh.
And I said, and I got joking with it. I said, who's Stegman? Yosemite Sam? And he said, no, Stegman is Bugs Bunny. And that made sense to me. Is that weird or what?
I guess they all got together and decided on... That's hilarious.
That is kind of funny. That was when I interviewed him the second time there in June. He told me that. I was like, that is so weird.
But whatever works.
Yeah.
Whatever works. Because they are broad characters. They're broad, cartoonish characters. They're very over the top. That's why it's so campy that I think it's. That's why I thought it was strange that it has been censored so heavily, or had been censored so heavily. Was because I thought it seems. It's a joke. It's funny. I don't think anybody meant for it to be a real comment on what was to come. But clearly, it many of those things did come to pass. But at the time, and in metal detectors and assaults at schools, those sorts of things, and teachers terribly afraid of their students. Those are all very real. Scenarios now, but I certainly would have never thought that they would have come up with something like Looney Tunes. But it is that campy. It is that fun. It is that over the top. And I guess it was also their way of not taking themselves too seriously as they were doing it. To remember that it was fun after all, and not just not serious.
Wanted to ask you about a few of your other films too here briefly. Of course, you did Incubus, where you get to work with John Cassavetes.
Yeah.
What was your experience like with that film? I mean, I haven't seen that film, but I watched some clips from it. It's got some great music in it.
Does it?
Yeah.
Yes, there is. There's is it Alice Cooper?
I think it was Iron Maiden.
Oh God. Okay.
Alice Cooper, that was class of 1984.
Okay.
I Am the Future.
You're the music guy. I don't know what music was in Incubus, I have to admit. John Cassavetes was shy guy,
Yeah.
but nice as hell. Nice as hell. I remember him telling a story about when he first met or started dating Jenna Rollins. And it
Okay.
surprised me, the story, because he was such a nice guy that he was given a limo to take him around town and to the set and whatever, but he always sat up front with the driver, and he'd let us ride around in the back with him, and he'd always, when we went for lunch, he would always pay. Just a sweet guy. But he talked about when he first started dating Jenna Rollins, he was, without her knowledge, dating somebody else at the same time. And he said that he came home one day and he guessed that he figures that she must have found out about this other gal, because he came home one day and she was in the bath. And he said, "Oh, hey, honey, I'm home," or whatever. And as he was going towards a particular doorway, he said a knife came flying through the air and went right in the door frame next to him.
Oh.
Yeah. And he turned around, and there she was, and he said, "Oh, I guess you've heard about the other woman." And what surprised me was I thought he was such a quiet guy, and I have to admit I had never seen any of his films. I didn't know who he was, and so I thought, wow, there's clearly some sort of bubbling volcanic passion in this man.
You didn't see Rosemary's Baby?
I didn't see Rosemary's Baby. I mean, I had by that time, but I didn't remember him. I'd seen it when I was a kid. I didn't remember it. And after the film, I went and saw Rosemary's Baby, Husbands, extraordinary film, Gloria, A Woman Under the Influence, all of those films. And I went, oh my God, what was I doing in a film with him? Oh my God, he was so extraordinary, and didn't have a clue, just didn't know who he was.
What was your
This quiet little guy who had this whole history of making these just explosive, intimate, engaging, on some levels ugly yet so beautiful films, real human films that were just mind-blowing.
Yeah, you were directed by John Howe for that film. What was your experience like working on that film in general? Was it a difficult shoot compared to Class of '84?
I think his last name, it's pronounced Huff.
Oh, Huff. I'm sorry.
I think. What was my experience like? Well, here's another one. Again, not a great experience with that director. And again, kind of a similar beginning, which is where I was supposed to be doing this nude scene, and I really didn't want to do it. Mm-hmm. And that kind of created a whole lot of strife. And then I eventually did a nude scene, but then they'd shot it in a way that we had not agreed to, and then there was controversy afterwards, and we had to go to a mediation in order to try to resolve it. And so it was not a good environment with the director or the producer in particular, but in terms of the actors. I don't know why that is. I don't know. It's got to be me, but I always have really positive experiences so far, anyway, with the actors, and I'm challenged with the directors that I work with so far. And I don't know if I'm just not used to film and television directors, and I'm just more comfortable on stage. I'm not sure, but it was tense with the director, I found. And to be really frank, I don't know what interviews John Cassavetes did about Incubus before he died. Peace be with him, such a sweet man. But my impression was that he was he was often short with John Huff on things.
Okay.
Just like, because he was a director himself. So it was like, come on, let's get on with this. We don't need to worry this little prop to death. Can we just get on with this scene?
Okay.
So that was my impression, too, that there was no love lost between them. Well, I don't know what John Huff's impression was of John Cassavetes. I can't imagine that it was anything other than enormous respect from John Huff's position. But I didn't get the impression that John Cassavetes was particularly impressed with John Huff. Now, having said all of that,
Mm-hmm.
the scariest film that I've ever seen in my life was Hell House.
Okay.
And John Huff directed that. So I do admire his work, because I swear to God that film scared the bejesus out of me. Every time I see it, it still scares the bejesus out of me.
And of course, in 1984, Lisa Langlois did a film called The Joy of Sex. And of course, you did that year a film called City Hall. And the reason I bring that up, because you both got to work with director Martha Coolidge.
City Girl.
Oh, City Girl. Oh,
Yeah.
I wrote that down wrong. I think I was thinking about the Bridget Fonda movie for some weird reason.
Yeah, that was a really brief little scene, and I've got to tell you, I've never seen the film.
I haven't either, but
I can't seem to find it anywhere. So,
had Laura Harrington in it, Peter Rajert, Colleen Camp. Colleen Camp was also in Joy of Sex, I believe, too. So she worked with Lisa as well.
Lisa's she has a really kind of a prolific career. She's been able to she does films in French and English and in Quebec and in English Canada and in the States, and yeah, she's a very lucky gal.
And of course, back in May, I interviewed a director that you worked with. I did not see the film Blind Side, but I had a wonderful chat with Paul Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you get to work with her, because Harvey Keitel was in that, and Lolita Davidovich.
Yeah. I actually had a scene with Harvey Keitel in that. That was on my reel for years and years and years. Very nice guy. Very quiet. I don't think he said two words to me or the guy that was in the scene. There was three of us in the scene. And didn't even say a word to us. And yet, it was in the middle of a Toronto blizzard. I mean, it was blizzarding.
Yeah.
Blizzard. And it was freezing. And we were filming in a motel that was closed. It was going to be torn down or something. So it was completely empty. And so there was no heat. But, of course, the crew had heaters. And they had heaters for themselves and for the top-of-the-line actors. For Harvey Keitel had his own heater. And every time we would do the scene, he'd come to the motel room and knock on the door, where the other actor and I were bundled in as many coats as possible, and then had to go to the door and take off the coats because we're supposed to be inside where it's warm, but it's really not. It's freezing. So we'd have to throw off our coats and then do the scene. And Harvey said, I don't even think he said anything. I think he just poked his head in and was able to see how cold it was. Again, never said a word to us. But the next thing we knew, the crew was giving up one of their heaters and bringing it inside for us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So Harvey had said, those actors need some heat. So I thought that was very... And I didn't have a ride to or from the set. I was getting there by TTC. And it was a blizzard. I'm standing at the bus stop out in the middle of nowhere. And with my coat up and my hood and my mucklucks, and I'm standing waiting. And this limo goes by, and it stops, and Harvey Keitel gets out and motions to me and says, "Come on." And I get in the back of his limo, and he gives me a ride back to Toronto.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So didn't chat. So, and on the way back, and this was a weird coincidence, the driver was the same driver that had been John Cassavetes' driver. So he said, "Hey, Erin," and I said, "Hey," I'd forgotten his name, whatever it was. And we chatted all the way back to Toronto, but Harvey didn't chat. But he was a very sweet guy, very thoughtful.
I had Paul Lynch on here back in May, and interesting was Small World, because there was a film shot here back in 1999 with Bo Derek, shot here in Fredericton, and there was all this buzz at the time about people spotting Bo Derek. I didn't know this, but I guess Paul Lynch was the director, and he had mentioned to me that he spent some great time in Fredericton, and he asked if, is the Daily Gleaner still there, which is our newspaper. I guess it still is. I don't read it, but but I guess so. But had a nice little chat with Paul Lynch. Now, what was your experience like with him?
He was lovely. So there, thank you. There's an experience with a director that I really enjoyed. He was a very nice guy. Seemed to have the crew right where he wanted them, right in his pocket, in the good sense. Everybody was on the same page. There was no time lost. Everyone seemed happy and engaged, and his relationship with, I mean, it was only one or two little scenes, but he was kind, engaged, and it was a very positive experience, very, very positive experience. I think, as a matter of fact, for some reason in my head somewhere I have this idea that I contacted him or he contacted me in Los Angeles, but I don't remember. I may be thinking of somebody else, but I think he moved to L.A.
He's there, yeah. He's in L.A., yep.
Yeah, and there was some project that we were talking about. I've forgotten what it was now, but it was a very positive experience.
I know he told me to not be a stranger, so I thought he was a great guy. And another film, the last film I wanted to mention to you, of course, Sticky Fingers. You were directed by Caitlin Adams, and I remember her, The Jerk.
I had a lovely time on that film. I auditioned on tape, which was weird back then in the 80s, because they were, of course, coming up from L.A., but usually they arrive and do their auditions here in person, but for some reason they auditioned on tape, and my hair was platinum blonde at the time, and they wanted someone who was going to look kind of like what is her name? Played Helen Slater.
Oh, Helen Slater, yeah.
What she, how she had her hair in the film, and she was all bleached out. So they cast me in that, and it's just one little scene at a party. But Helen Slater was really sweet gal, and my experience with everybody on the set was lovely. And the fellow who played my husband or my fiance in that, what was his name?
I don't know.
I forgot, but he's gone on to do all these great films, and I think he was up from New York or something. But he's gone on to do some lovely work as well. But you had a bad experience? You thought she was a jerk?
No. She was in the movie The Jerk with Steve Martin.
Oh, I thought you said she was a jerk.
Oh yeah, she's the one. Did you see The Jerk?
I probably I don't remember.
Oh, okay. She plays this woman that works at the country fair, and of course Steve Martin's this naive guy, and I think it's one of the funniest movies Steve Martin ever made. And there was a scene like earlier where he's excited because his name's in the phone book. That was a big deal to him, and she grabs him, and she's all dominant and sexual, and he has Steve Martin up in the Ferris wheel in one of those things. You could see it rocking back and forth, and he goes, "Hey, that's my name tattooed on your ass right next to the date. Wait a minute. First I get my name in the phone book, now it's on your ass. I bet more people see that than the phone book." And she was so dominant with him. It's just funny seeing Steve Martin so naive and awkward.
Yeah.
But it's a very funny, and that's how I know of of Caitlin Adams. She was in that movie.
Yeah, and I think she also produced it, or I think, because I think it was sort of an all female production team. I think production and creative team. I think on that, which was particularly nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a very positive experience as well.
You've done
and what I think is positive is it easy? Is it enjoyable? And is it not an overnight shoot? Okay, then I'm good. Then it's fine.
You've done a lot of television. Is there anything that stands out that you enjoyed the best to do?
I just did an episode, and just one small little episode of The Strain.
Okay.
But it was a period in The Strain. There's flashbacks to different, like the 70s and then the 40s, and in this one it was a flashback into the 70s, and I played a madam of a of a house of ill repute in Denmark, and so they in the audition anyway, they wanted me to speak some Dutch and then do the rest of the scene with a Dutch accent. And I thought, I don't know how to do a Dutch accent. I don't know how to speak Dutch, but somebody in my agent's office speaks Dutch, so she translated these lines for me, and I sort of learned them phonetically, and then of course we did the scene, and they cut all that out, but we just did the rest of the scene with a Dutch accent, which I thought I'll just kind of go German, because I was watching the woman who played. Do you watch Game of Thrones?
Actually, to be honest, I haven't watched television in years. I got my television set up where it plays my Blu-rays.
Oh,
yeah.
Game of Thrones. You must watch Game of Thrones. There's an actress who is Dutch, and so she. I listen to how she speaks, and it just sounds to me like a German accent, ever so slight. So I'll just do that, and that was a lot of fun. I think it was a lot of fun because it was a really interesting character. You got to be in a different era and a different accent, and that was such. And and they made a dress for me from scratch, which I thought was so luxurious, because they hand you something from a wardrobe and say, here, this is what you're wearing. But instead they took my measurements and they said, what colors do you like, and made this whole dress for me. And I thought, I feel special. I feel really special.
Yeah.
And so that was the most recent and the most fun thing I've done so far. I've certainly done bigger roles than that, but that for some reason has just stuck with me as a real fun little day that I had.
I saw a picture of you from Modern Family. You get to work. I loved Married with Children back in the day, so you get to work with Ed O'Neill.
The sweetest guy on the planet. The sweetest guy on the planet. Nice guy. When you do television and film, I've learned this over the years, that I learned it pretty early on, that when there are rules that when you get into the van that's going to take you to the set, because we were filming actually on location somewhere, so that you get into a van, depending on where you are on the call sheet in terms of your status as an actor. Are you a lead? Are you a supporting? Are you a day player? Are you an extra? That's where you sit in the van. So background goes to the back of the van. Then you get to sit closer and closer to the driver, dependent on where you are on the call sheet. Well, when the van showed up, I just got in. I got into not the front seat with the driver, but it's a van with a lot of different seats, but I got into the one right behind the driver. And then, because I didn't know we were going to have anybody else go with us. And then Ed gets in, and he gets in beside me, and I went, oh, I'm in the wrong seat. I should have gotten in back farther. I'm in the wrong seat. And he says, hi, I'm Ed, and he shakes my hand. And I said, oh, hi, I'm Erin. I'm in the wrong seat. I'm sorry. but he was just a very, very lovely, lovely man, and didn't. And that's the protocol too. Is that if were Ed to get in the seat beside me and not introduce himself, I would not be allowed to say hello to him. They have to say hello to you first. And so when he did say hello to me, that enabled me to then be able to say hello back, because that's the protocol. Is that because with stars, everybody comes up and talks to them.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're on the set, you don't go up and say hi to them. That's why I was saying earlier when my friend went up and said hi to Roddy McDowell, I was saying, oh, you don't do that. You don't do that. But she didn't know. And so that's why it was so sweet of him to respond back to her. And on the set, with on Modern Family, I didn't know that Ed would be getting in beside me. So it was very nice of him to say hello. And then I was able to say hello and have a conversation with him. The same thing happened when I did Sensitive Skin. It was with Kim Cattrall.
Okay.
And I was just sitting there, and she was over in another chair, but I didn't say hello to her. I didn't say a word to her. And at the end of, when she was done having her makeup done, she came over and introduced herself and said, we're going to have a lot of fun today. And I said, yes, we are. And that meant now I can talk to her. But until the stars introduce themselves, you're not allowed to say hello to them. Not that anyone's going to castigate you, but it's just the way that the manners of the set are, so that you don't, so that the stars aren't bothered over and over and over again by people wanting to take a selfie or just wanting to shoot the shit or whatever. And so that was my Modern Family experience, that he was just a nice guy who sat beside me and introduced himself and allowed me to chat with him. So.
Any other television that stand out to you?
I don't think so. I did a Saving Hope here, which I really enjoyed.
Okay.
But since I've been back, I think in Toronto, I think I've done more television than the entire time I was in LA.
Do you prefer television over film?
No, I think I prefer film because film is slower.
Okay.
And television is still so fast.
Okay.
That my creative process is slow. I'm just really one of those, maybe I'll try this. No, maybe I'll try that. It's like, oh, no, next setup. Come on, Erin, let's go. We're on to the next setup. Like, oh, I'm just so slow. I like the theater because you have days and days and weeks to rehearse something, and you've got somebody else's input, and you talk about the character, and you have a lot of time to try things out and say, oh, that didn't work, or to sort of discover something that might be in its nascent stages and nurture it and try it until it sort of grows into a performance that you really are proud of. But in television and film, I just admire television and film actors so much because you have to come fully loaded and ready to go, and I'm not. I'm still sort of finding my way. I want to see what everybody else brings to the table. Well, what do you think? What do you think? Oh, well, then that changes my performance. If you're going to do that, then I'm going to do this. And you don't really have that luxury in television in particular. So I still have a lot to learn, I think. A lot to learn.
I was going to ask, do you have like any charities that you're involved in? I know I mentioned one that I was part of, but I was wondering if you got anything that you're involved with.
I don't, but I am very interested in something you'd mentioned earlier, which is mental health.
Yeah.
I myself have suffered from depression,
okay.
Anxiety and depression for a number of years. It started in my early like adolescence. So that's something that I would dearly love to be involved in because it's something that is very sort of close to my heart.
I'll tell you what, I'll send you the Doubtfire challenge that I did, and I'll send you the one that Lisa did. And Nancy McLaughlin from Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, did it as well. And she even used props from the film as background. And she did it. And I've had a few people respond to that, and I'll send them to you so you can take a look at them.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be really great. I really liked a couple of months ago, there was the International Mental Health Day,
Mm-hmm.
and I liked that people were posting their own experiences with mental health challenges, either their own or their families or their friends.
Mm-hmm.
And it really does help to destigmatize and ease the shame, I think, that that so many people feel around it, and it's something that really is just an illness like anything else. So, yes, that would be great. Please send that to me.
I will do that. And I don't know how you're like on Facebook. I know I've messaged you on there. I'm connected with Lisa and Stefan and Mary Lynn. You mind if I add you?
Oh, go right ahead.
Sure.
Go right ahead.
Yeah. That way, if you get anything you're promoting, I can most certainly promote it on here. And,
Terrific.
I can do that. What else was I going to mention? I'm here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and I know Lisa, and Stefan knows where I am, and I think even Mary Lynn Ross might know where I am. A lot of my guests don't know where the Maritimes is. Are you familiar with my area?
Well, my sister actually works out in Halifax for 6 months out of the year. She works for 22 Minutes. This hour is 22 Minutes.
Okay.
So
I know that show.
Yeah, I've never been out to visit her, but she says it's gorgeous. It's not Fredericton, it is Halifax, but at least that's. I've never been further east than Montreal.
Okay.
So I don't know it personally, no.
Yeah, I always joke. I say our closest celebrities, I think, are the Trailer Park Boys.
No, this hour has 22 minutes now.
Oh?
Yeah, they're out there.
I got a little tidbit about the Trailer Park Boys. They did a movie a few years ago called Swearin' At, and it's in the world's book of Guinness records, having the most F-bombs of 935 F-bombs.
Oh, really?
It beat Wolf of Wall Street in the South Park movie.
I was just going to say, what about Wolf of Wall Street?
It beat Wolf of Wall Street. It did.
Or South Park.
It beat South Park, the movie, and it beat Wolf of Wall Street. I looked it up, and leave it to the Trailer Park Boys,
Wow.
Have you ever watched them?
I have. Well, what I remember, the only character I remember is the guy with the big Coke bottle glasses.
Bubbles.
That's the only guy that I remember.
Well, in Swearin' At, they're actually playing themselves, and boy, he is the total opposite of Bubbles.
Really?
Oh, yeah. But, that's...
They're not representative of what one would find if one were to travel to the Maritimes.
Yeah,
Are they?
I think so.
Oh.
I think the guy who played Ricky, Rob Wells, I think is from the Maritimes. I think, if I remember correctly. So, but yeah. But no, and one more thing I wanted to ask you, and I would love to get an autograph picture.
Oh, sure.
I would love that. And I've gotten a few from the film already, and I'd love to. Do I just send you my mailing address?
Yes, let me get a.
Actually, don't take it down yet. I'll pause this when I close out, and then I'll give it to you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that way I don't give it out on the air.
On the air? No, you don't want to do that.
Well, I had one guest that come on here, gave his email address out twice during the interview, and it's a good thing I record these.
Yes. Yeah.
So I was able to, edit so he protects his privacy, but... it's we're closing in on 2 hours here, and I gotta say, between you and Lisa and Stefan, I'm gonna tell you, it's been great. Marilyn Ross didn't do 2 hours, but I've had her on twice, so that makes up for it.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, and I'll probably reach out to her again before the end of the year, make her part of this, and no, it's been great. Regardless, I know there's some people that had a tough time with Class of 1984 filming it, and
Yes.
I'm really sorry that happened, and I'm really sorry that you had a difficult time. I certainly purposely looked you up for the past couple of years. I'm glad I connected with you.
I am too, Greg. Thank you. It was such a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, I was excited because I knew you'd done an interview on the Blu-ray disc,
Right.
and I was like, she'll come on the show. I went on when I found you because I remember you were Flannery back then, and now
Yeah.
you're Noble. So I was like, okay, now I think I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. My real name is Noble.
Okay.
And when I was 16, both of my parents were in theater, in the business, and both of their last names are Noble, and I wanted my own identity. And so I changed it to Flannery, and then when I was, I think in my mid-20s, I said, okay, it's time to go back. And it was that, I'd never changed it legally to Flannery. It's always been Noble. And I just went back to Noble. It's just a blip in my adolescence. So
Sure.
you know when you need to sort of step away from your parents and say, no, I want my own thing. And then once I was sort of far enough away, I thought, well, I want my name back. So I just changed it back, and I'm happy I did.
Okay. Well, I want you to be very patient with me in terms of this getting out because you're my 160th interview.
This year?
No, you're my 92nd this year.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, I've been busy. I love doing this. My show's on live Sunday nights right now, and it's on for 2 hours. So sometimes I can play a 2-hour interview, or I can play 2-hour-long interviews. And right now there's talk about hopefully getting me another slot so I can kind of ship them through a little faster.
Oh, wow, you're expanding, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I enjoy it. This is a good station, and the people like what I'm doing. I won the Barry Award last year for Best Spoken Word Show, and I've never won an award before, so that was exciting.
Oh, how exciting. Congratulations.
Yeah, and I'm very, very happy to be able to introduce people to these movies like Class of 1984 and be able to celebrate them and hopefully connect with people. And I enjoyed the connections I've made. In fact, I think back when I first saw Class of 1984, and I was like, if anybody had told me that I would have a connection with Lisa Langlois and Stefan Arngrim and Mary Lynn Ross and yourself, and even talked to Gord Lewis from Teenage Hit, I would have said no. And yet, this is amazing. It's like a dream,
You know what's interesting? Greg, is it's one of those things where it really is about ask for what you want, reach out for what you want. And I always think, well, I'll be a really good girl, and I'll wait, and I'll be patient, and then things will come along, and I'll be rewarded. It's like, no. You have to actually reach out. You have to really ask for what you want. And what can they say but no? And that's a real lesson for me is to remember to keep moving forward. Just simply ask. You never know unless you ask.
Well, I thank you for coming on here and celebrating my 45th birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, I know you and Lisa are both 39.
Yes.
I got to say, you both aged well, though. You're both stunning.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Have you connected with any of the other cast in Toronto? I know there's a few of you there.
I am not. You told me that Lisa's coming back to Toronto.
And Neil Clifford's there, too.
Yeah, but you said he's not acting anymore, is he?
Yeah, he's doing sculptures, though. His webpage is there.
Boy, I want to look him up.
Yeah.
Because I'd love to see what he's doing. I'd love to see those sculptures. What an interesting thing to do.
Yeah. But before you go, I would like to, actually before you pause, get my address, but I wonder if I could get you to do a plug for my show.
Sure. All right.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, shoot.
Hi, this is Erin Noble, and you're listening to Python's Paradise with Greg Gilbert out of Fredericton, New Brunswick. I'm doing that one again.
Sure, go ahead.
Ready?
Sure.
Hi, this is Erin Noble. You're listening to Python's Paradise with Greg Gilbert out of Fredericton, New Brunswick.
There you go. Well, Erin, this has been so fantastic. We're celebrating, of course, the 35th anniversary of Class of 1984. which was so problematic to film it. But hey, it brought me some joy, and I'm hoping, I can bring some fond memories or fun experience to the wonderful people that have been part of that film.
I agree.
Yes, I've enjoyed it.
Thank you, Greg. I've enjoyed it